Okay, we're here in West Palm Beach. It's the middle of March 2024, and a lot of our mango trees have already flowered, and some of them are still actively flowering. And I wanted to highlight an issue that we've been seeing for the last several years on mango trees that didn't used to be too much of a major problem here, but has become something of an issue. So the last several years I've noticed that we're getting more thrips. Thrips are a type of insect, a very small insect, that like to feed on fruit tree leaves, and they'll kind of suck the juices out of the leaves in many cases. And when that happens, this is kind of what it looks like. So people see this and they assume that the tree has a micronutrient deficiency, but actually this kind of weird warped leaf is usually indicative of thrips. And so one thing I began to notice a couple of years ago, because thrips have been around forever, is that we were getting thrips that would feed on the flower panicles. And at first I wasn't really sure what was going on. I only made the connection later. But when this happens, the panicle comes out, emerges, or starts to emerge like it normally would. But what happens is when the spikes start to come out from the sides, the flowers don't open up like they're supposed to. So if you can zoom in here, you see these flowers aren't really opening properly. And I mean, a few of them might, but you can see closely here on the panicle, there's these little black or brownish specks. And a lot of people would see that and they would assume that that's anthracnose, and it's actually from thrip damage. Now, how widespread is it? Not so much that I even need to care a whole lot. But if this was somebody's only mango tree in their backyard and this happened to them, they'd be more alarmed by it, rightfully so. So, unfortunately, thrips are notoriously hard to control. There are some chemicals that can kill them. They're not necessarily chemicals that you would want to be spraying on a fruiting tree, however. But there are organic methods you can use to try to control them. There are predatory insects that feed on thrips. And I've thought about the possibility of releasing a lot of these predatory insects in the bloom period to try to prevent this issue in the future. I also believe they can feed on the small fruit as well, because I've noticed some damage to the skin of some of the little pea-sized mangoes on the panicles that they were feeding on. So this is kind of an issue that's emerged just in the last couple of years here in South Florida. I'm not even sure how widespread of an issue it is. If it's due to like newer species of thrips, or if it's kind of just a burgeoning in the population of the thrips that we've already had in Florida for ages, but just something that I've observed and wanted to educate people about.
Does it warrant cutting off branches that are
Infected?
infected?
No,
Yeah.
from what I've seen, actually, when they get it on the leaves, they go away at some point, and the new growth that comes out, and I can show examples of this where a tree got thrips damage on the foliage, and then the growth that came out later on came out healthy. So, and there's probably things that are hunting them naturally, occurring bugs. I don't know a whole lot, I'm not an entomologist, but would it help to cut off branches and foliage? Perhaps. Although then you'd have to be concerned about what comes behind, the new growth that comes out, then possibly getting the thrips, because when you cut a mango tree, you stimulate growth flushes usually a lot quicker than if you just leave the stems at rest to flush on their own, which is generally what I've done here at this point. And so my feeling is like, if it's at rest for months and months and months, there's a good chance the thrips are gone by the time the new growth flush comes out. Whereas if you cut them, new growth flushes are emerging from the branches. The thrips might still be there just a couple weeks after you did that prune. So depending on the size of the tree, a mango can start flushing growth just like 3 weeks after you cut it, So my approach is they're not that big of a deal. They're not like an existential threat to our mango trees or anything like that. I would say mostly so far they've been a cosmetic issue with perhaps a minimal amount of fruit loss due to whatever feeding they've done on the panicles that ended up drying up or whatever. But so far, not that big of a deal, but something people should be aware about, because they might look at these panicles and, like I said earlier, think that they've gotten anthracnose, and they go out and they're spraying copper and it's not doing anything, because copper does not treat thrips. So this Kerry mango has had some thrip damage on some of its leaves in an earlier stage of growth, and then it flushed growth later. This would have been last year, and this growth came out perfectly healthy. So it just goes to show that thrips are not always active or present, and they do go away naturally on their own or because of predators or whatever. So
if you see it, hang in there and be patient.
Yep.
So after meeting with Alex, I came home and examined my trees for the thrip damage that he was mentioning, and I only found it on my coconut cream. But like he mentioned, you see damage here, and then the flush after that of growth is fine. Now this is the only tree I found. I did not find it on Glen, I did not find it on Sugarloaf, I did not find it on Beverly, Maha Chinook, Namdok Mai, Julie Pickering, just to name a few, Lemon Zest. This is the only tree I found it on. But comment down below, have you seen this kind of leaf on your trees, where the ridges or the ribs, if you will, are very pronounced, and it makes it like a hard leaf, not the same texture as this regular leaf here. What you see is kind of somewhat shriveled, but then again, the growth that it continued to produce was fine. The leaves look fine. But there we see some of that thrip damage. Report down below what mangoes you've seen this on in your home orchard.